Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to give my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we're going to go to our first match of the night. It is for the number one contendership for the TNT Championship. It is Bryan Danielson versus Swerve. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Danielson and Swerve, with Danielson and Swerve both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Swerve then hits a sidewalk slam off the apron on Danielson. It looked absolutely brutal. Swerve then hits a power slam on Danielson. Swerve was keeping the pace of the match. Swerve then goes for a 450 splash, but Danielson had his knees up to counter the 450 splash. Danielson then hits a running knee off the apron on Swerve to the outside. Danielson then hits a drop kick off the top rope. Danielson then lands multiple yes kicks on Swerve for a near fall. Swerve then gets up, hits a foot stomp off the top rope on Danielson. Swerve then goes for another foot stomp, but Danielson ends up countering it into a half crab. Swerve breaks the hold. Danielson then hits an avalanche back suplex. Danielson then seems to be hurt or be fighting through an injury through this match. Danielson then applies a label lock on Swerve, but Swerve breaks the hold. Danielson then hits a running knee on Swerve. Swerve then hits a Swerve stomp for a near fall. Prince Nana is here. He ends up causing a distraction with the referee. Paige is here as well. Paige tries to chase off Prince Nana. Danielson then capitalizes on the distraction, hits a running knee, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match and new number one contender for the TNT Championship is Bryan Danielson. Couple things I want to say about this match, man. Number one, this was a solid match to start Dynamite. I'm loving what Swerve's doing right now, and Bryan Danielson, man. Bryan Danielson has had a hell of a career so far in AEW, man. And honestly, I hate saying this, but it's the truth, man. Every match that he's had so far has been an absolute banger. Seriously, man, the match he had with Sabre Jr., banger. The match he had with Okada, banger. I mean, he's had some great matches with Kenny Omega, or the match that he did have with Kenny Omega at Grand Slam, the original Grand Slam. He's put on phenomenal matches for the fans, man. And to be honest with you, this match, again, absolute banger. And hats off to Swerve, man. I mentioned this multiple times about Swerve. Swerve is severely underrated. And with that being said, a lot of people had mixed emotions about Danielson actually winning this matchup, man, myself included. I mean, look, I'm a big fan of Bryan Danielson, but I'm also a big fan of Swerve and what he's done in AEW and throughout his wrestling career. But, you go from, and again, I can see why people were disappointed, because you go from him having probably one of the best matches of his career with Adam Page and him successfully beating Adam Page to him losing to Bryan Danielson and kind of losing that momentum. And to be honest with you, did it take away a little bit of momentum away from Swerve? A little bit, especially after the big win and the big victory that he had over Page. But with that being said, it looks like they're going to continue the storyline between Adam Page and Swerve, which I'm not against it at all, because at the end of the day, hats off to Swerve for this, but Adam Page kind of needs this storyline right now, because there's no place to slot him in at all right now, storyline wise. And that's just me being honest. That's just me being real right now. Everything else, even with pertaining to the Elite, Kenny Omega is still dealing with stuff with Don Callis and the Don Callis family. Matt and Nick Jackson have a future title shot against Ricky Starks and Big Bill, because Ricky Starks and Big Bill ended up beating FTR for the AEW Tag Team Championships on Collision, and they're the new AEW Tag Team Champions. So, they actually, the Young Bucks have a future title shot, which, if I had to guess, most likely will take place at Full Gear in LA at the Forum. Which, again, I'm not against it. And hats off to Big Bill and Ricky Starks for becoming the new AEW Tag Team Champions as well. But the Elite are tied up right now, man. And right now, where do you really slot Adam Page into anything right now? And right now, it's Swerve. So at the same time, it builds up Adam Page. It continues the momentum a little bit, if you think about it, with Swerve, with continuing the storyline between Adam Page and Swerve, possibly leading up to a match at Full Gear. So, again, I'm not against it, but do I think it took a little bit of momentum away from Swerve after losing to Danielson? A little bit. But I definitely look forward to a matchup between Danielson and Christian for the TNT Championship, and that was actually announced that match will take place this Saturday on Collision at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Samoa Joe. There was a video package shown of Samoa Joe. We had one last week as well on Dynamite. Samoa Joe, man, he's still chasing after MJF in the AEW World Championship, and honestly, I'm not against it. And, what I'm about to say right now might be a hot topic for most people. So again, take it as you will. But Samoa Joe needs to be shown more on Dynamite, to be honest with you. I understand what Ring of Honor is trying to do and what it's done for a lot of people's careers, as well as Samoa Joe, CM Punk, Adam Cole, Kenny Omega, The Elite. A lot of people have went through Ring of Honor. Even people on WWE, man. Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens. And that's just to name a few. So, I'm not going to sit here and knock Ring of Honor for what it was and what it's trying to be. But there's, talent on that roster right now that do not need to be on Ring of Honor. Samoa Joe's one of them, and Athena is another one. Athena needs to be put back into the women's roster on AEW. Because I'm not trying to knock Chris Statlander or Saraya, but they need to have Athena on Dynamite. That's just me being honest with y'all, man. I think it's kind of a demotion to Athena to be on Ring of Honor. That's just my opinion. I'm not trying to knock Ring of Honor or anything else like that. It's just she needs to be on Dynamite as well as Samoa Joe. That's just my honest opinion. And honestly, Samoa Joe chasing the AEW World Championship, I'm not against that either. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Powerhouse Hobbs versus Chris Jericho. This match pretty much came to fruition after Powerhouse Hobbs attacked Jericho last week, and Hobbs became the new member of the Don Callis family. The match itself was a great match. Well, decent match. Back and forth matchup between Hobbs and Jericho. Hobbs and Jericho then both exchanged in the middle of the ring, with Hobbs landing multiple spine busters on Jericho. Hobbs was keeping the pace. Jericho then gets up, hits a code breaker on Hobbs for a near fall. Jericho then applies the walls of Jericho on Hobbs, but Hobbs breaks the hold. And then Hobbs ultimately hits a devastating power slam on Jericho, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Powerhouse Hobbs. A couple things I want to say about this too, and I mentioned this last week. I'm all for Powerhouse Hobbs being with Don Callis and the Don Callis family for multiple reasons. Number one being the most important. This puts Hobbs in a predominant storyline, man. I think Hobbs has a lot of potential. The last time that he was in a predominant storyline, if you want to call it that, was a matchup between him and Miro that took place at All Out. And after that, it kind of fizzled out for both Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs until Hobbs joined the likes of Don Callis. Like I said, man, Hobbs joining Callis, it just puts him in more predominant storylines. Right now, what Don Callis is doing with the Don Callis family, it's red hot right now, man. It's one of the best things going right now in AEW, in my honest opinion. It's a great stable. Now they have Guevara, Takeshita, Will Ospreay, Powerhouse Hobbs. It's a solid stable, man. And Don Callis, people love to hate Don Callis. So Powerhouse Hobbs coming into the fold with the Don Callis family and him already being a heel, it gels perfectly together, man. So I look forward to what's going to happen next with Powerhouse Hobbs. And I'm sure Jericho is far from over, or not far from over, but, he still has a lot of animosity towards Don Callis, and I think that storyline's far from being over. Moving on from that, we have Adam Cole in the Kingdom video package. This was kind of similar to what was happening last week, with Adam Cole pretty much doing chores around Roderick Strong's house. And Strong always mentioning that he wants Adam Cole to do one more thing, and Cole keeps telling him that he needs to go to get surgery or 2 surgeries on his ankle. Look, man, I've been so torn on this whole thing with Adam Cole and the Kingdom and all this stuff and how it relates to who was in the mask, the Devil's Mask that attacked Jay White. And I know Adam Cole had mentioned on his Twitter that, he actually did break his ankle and that he's going to have to require 2 surgeries. Look, man, for what it's worth, do I still think it's Adam Cole? There's a big part of me that thinks that it is still Adam Cole that was wearing that Devil's Mask. And I still kind of believe partially that it's a work. He might need surgery, possibly, but I'm not going to rule him out from him being the person in that mask. I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not. Because, they're still showing him moving around, even though he's in like one of those little wheelchair things or whatever, doing chores or whatever for Roderick Strong and all these storylines and video packages with the Kingdom. But I can't really necessarily say that I'm going to rule out Adam Cole of being the person in that Devil's Mask that attacked Jay White. It's hard for me to say no on that. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Rey Fenix defending the International Championship against Orange Cassidy. Now, credit, this match was actually supposed to be Jon Moxley versus Rey Fenix for the International Championship, but it was announced before the show actually went on air that Jon Moxley was not medically cleared to compete in that match last night. So we get Rey Fenix versus Orange Cassidy instead. The match itself, it was a really good match. Back and forth matchup between Phoenix and Cassidy, with Phoenix and Cassidy both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Phoenix then hits a frog splash off the top rope for a near fall. Cassidy then gets up, hits a jumping DDT off the top rope on Phoenix. Cassidy then hits a beach break for a near fall. Cassidy then also hits an orange punch on Phoenix, which allows Orange Cassidy to ultimately hit the finish on Rey Fenix, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and new international champion is Orange Cassidy. Hats off to Orange Cassidy for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a close-up with Timeless Toni Storm. Toni Storm's going to debut her first silent film production, which I thought was absolutely awesome, man. The things that, and I mentioned this last week, man, the stuff that Toni Storm is doing right now is flawless. I mean, absolutely awesome. The new character, the persona that she's took on, the body of work that she's put in so far in AEW has been absolutely phenomenal. And honestly, I think Toni Storm right now is really carrying that women's division. I'm not trying to knock Statlander or Saraya, but everybody's, in tune to what Toni Storm is doing right now. And it's bringing a lot of eyeballs to the women's locker room, and especially to Toni Storm. And for what it's worth, even though she's currently not, a women's champion for AEW or TBS champion, I mean, honestly, for what it's worth, I think Toni Storm taking a lot of spotlight away from the AEW Women's Championship as well as the TBS Championship, because everybody wants to know what the hell was going on with Toni Storm. And hats off to Toni Storm, man. She's doing a phenomenal job with this new character, with this Timeless Toni Storm. And I look forward to what's going to happen next with Toni Storm. Moving on from that, we go into our next match. This was a glorified squash match. It is Wardlow versus Matt Sydal. Wardlow was pretty much keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Wardlow hitting multiple power bombs on Matt Sydal. Referee sounds for the bell, and your winner of the match is Wardlow. After the match, Wardlow is seen walking through the crowd to go to the back. Couple of things I have to say about this, man, and again, it might be a hot take, and if it is, it is. But I think Wardlow's time with AEW is coming to an end. And I mentioned this last week when it pertains to some AEW talent that might be on the short list to go over to WWE. And I mentioned, obviously Jade Cargill, Ricky Starks might also be one, and I also put Wardlow on that list to jump ship from AEW to WWE. I can 100% see it, man. I really do believe that Tony Khan really has nothing else left for Wardlow in AEW. And I think the well has definitely run dry for Wardlow as far as storyline based and creatively right now. There's nothing left for Wardlow to do in AEW. And I'm not trying to knock Wardlow, man. I think Wardlow is a really good wrestler. He's a powerhouse. But, it really... How do I put this? I think ever since the storyline that was leading up between MJF and Wardlow, and after that, I'll never forget it, man. The first match that he had after that great storyline with Max, he had a match with JD Drake. And I looked at it and I was like, man, this is disappointing. And I'm not trying to knock JD Drake, but you go from one of the most predominant storylines at that time in AEW to, okay, Wardlow versus JD Drake, and we got nothing else, nothing else for him. And then you have Wardlow becoming the TNT champion. But the problem with that is that championship was so much hot potato to so many other people. It really took away the aura, if you will, of Wardlow, because a lot of people, think of Wardlow like a Goldberg or a Batista, and at the time he had this, this streak going a little bit, and it did not matter. I mean, everything, his mannerisms and everything that he's done does kind of symbolize, or has resemblance to Goldberg or Batista. Even now you have people chanting Wardlow just like they did back in 1997 with Goldberg. It's the same thing. The same exact thing. So, I mean, I just think personally the well has run dry for Wardlow. I just don't think there's anything else left for him to do in AEW, and here we are again giving him glorified squash matches to try to build him back up. I just think it's just not there, man. Unfortunately, it's not. And I think Wardlow is on the short track list to WWE. I would not be surprised if he's not the next person to go to WWE, just like Jade Cargill did and Cody Rhodes. I would not be surprised if we don't see Wardlow, whether it's on the main roster or on NXT here in the probably next few years. I would not be surprised. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Adam Page versus Jay White. I thought this was a good match. back and forth matchup between Adam Page and Jay White, with Page keeping the pace of the match. Page then hits a Death Valley driver on Jay White. Page then also hits a fallaway slam. Page then hits a pump-up powerbomb on Jay White to the outside off the apron and looked absolutely brutal. Page then hits a fallaway slam off the middle rope, as well as a moonsault off the top to the outside. Jay White then gets up, hits a flatliner on Adam Page. Page then gets up, hits a Deadeye on Jay White for a near fall. Bullet Club Gold are trying to distract the referee. Prince Nana tries to attack Page, but then Jay White ultimately hits a roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Jay White. After the match, MJF music hits. He's standing on the stage. MJF then has a microphone and says that he wants his title back. Jay White then mocks MJF. MJF then hypes up the crowd. MJF then says the title means absolutely everything to him. But MJF also hypes up Jay White and tells him how good of a superstar he is. Juice Robinson then, stoops to a whole new low with the roll of quarters, pretty much mocking MJF, which completely pissed off MJF. And then Juice Robinson was pretty much playing mind games with MJF, especially with MJF's past. I know a lot of people, MJF has mentioned a lot of things that happened in his past, growing up and stuff like that, and a lot of the, horrible things that happened to him when he was a kid. And I think what Juice Robinson did, man, was an all-time ultimate low. And again, it really did piss off MJF. So, obviously MJF has a matchup with Jay White at Full Gear for the AEW World Championship. I'm definitely looking forward to that match. And again, man, hopefully we get some kind of insight on who really was in that Devil's Mask that attacked Jay White backstage. And, Jay White, during the, back and forth banter, if you will, the microphone between himself and MJF, Jay White mentioned to MJF if he has 4 friends that can team up with him, that can go up against, the Bullet Club Gold, then by all means, go find them. But, it makes you think, who was in the Devil's Mask, especially after Jay White made that comment. And if it does happen where, MJF does find 3 other people to team up with him, who is it going to be? Is it going to be the Kingdom? Is it going to be Roderick Strong and Matt Taven and Mike Bennett? Was it MJF in the Devil's Mask? Who knows? I still believe it was Adam Cole, but again, it's still yet to be seen. But I definitely look forward to what's going to happen next with MJF and Bullet Club Gold. And if MJF is going to find other superstars in the back to team up with him to go up against Bullet Club Gold. So again, still yet to be seen, but I definitely look forward to what's going to happen next with MJF and Bullet Club Gold. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. Is for the AEW Women's Championship. It is Saraya defending the AEW Women's Championship against Shida. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Saraya and Shida, with Saraya and Shida both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Shida was keeping the pace of the match. And then somebody dressed in a, all black clothes, a black mask, ends up trying to attack Shida. And come to find out it was actually Ruby Soho that tried to attack Shida. Toni Storm then comes down to attack Ruby Soho. Shida then hits a running knee. Shida then hits a Falcon Arrow for a near fall. And then Shida ultimately hits a roll-up on Saraya, pins her for the 3. And your winner of the match and new AEW Women's Champion is Shida. Hats off to Shida for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of Dynamite. It is Luchasaurus versus Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland's making his AEW in-ring debut. The match itself, it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Luchasaurus and Copeland, with Luchasaurus keeping the pace of the match. Luchasaurus quickly hits a tombstone pile driver on Copeland for a near fall. Copeland then gets up, hits a DDT off the apron on Luchasaurus. Copeland then hits an impaler for a near fall as well. Copeland then goes for a spear, but goes through a chair instead. Luchasaurus then hits a chokeslam for a near fall. Copeland then hits a spear off the apron to the outside on Luchasaurus. Nick Wayne then causes a distraction. Then Copeland hits Luchasaurus with the title from Christian Cage. He stole the TNT Championship. Hit Luchasaurus, which allowed Copeland to hit a spear on Luchasaurus. Pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match is Adam Copeland. After the match, an all-out brawl took place. The Blackpool Combat Club came down. Wheeler Yuta was there as well. They all had a big old brawl. You had seen Danielson pretty much choking out Christian Cage with a label lock. which they will have a match, like I mentioned earlier, at Collision this Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern. So I'm definitely looking forward to that match as well. Couple of things I want to say about Dynamite entirely, man, before I get out of here. This whole Tuesday Night War thing, man, I think it really got amplified more than it really truly had to be from both parties. I'm not sitting here saying what AEW didn't do was petty, as well as NXT. I mean, if we're looking at AEW, the comments that Tony Khan made on Twitter about calling Triple H and Shawn Michaels a bunch of bald assholes, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. But it's like, you have this ongoing beef, if you will, between AEW and NXT. And I just think the comment was kind of petty from Tony Khan, even though I thought it was hilarious. But then I look at the side of NXT, and, I don't cover NXT, and I don't watch NXT, but I still, know what, I have an inkling of what's going on over in NXT. And I saw some of the highlights. They had John Cena, obviously, on NXT for the first time, Paul Heyman. Cody Rhodes opened the show and made a huge announcement about the return of the Dusty Classic, which I think is absolutely awesome. Then you had Asuka as well on NXT. And then you had, I didn't even know he was going to show up, you also had The Undertaker show up on NXT to attack Braun Breaker. So, I mean, as far as desperation is concerned, I think NXT was trying to pull out all the cards they possibly could, which was a huge side of desperation from NXT. I mean, having Taker there to attack Braun Breaker, John Cena, Paul Heyman, Asuka, Cody Rhodes to open the show. I think, NXT and Shawn Michaels were trying to go overload on NXT last night to try to beat AEW in the ratings. And to be honest with you, man, I just think it's a bunch of bullshit, to be honest. And we had this beef, or this rivalry, if you will, between AEW and NXT, and Dynamite ended up smoking them. And unfortunately, that was the downfall of NXT, and, the NXT that we all once loved went to shit. It wasn't the black and gold brand anymore. It was just NXT, and then it turned into NXT 2.0. And it was getting run by Vince and Bruce Pritchard, and we all saw what happened with that. And it just turned into, like I said, absolute shit. Nobody cared about NXT, and nobody was really truly invested in NXT 2.0. And plus, a lot of the originals from NXT were all gone. They were on either on the main roster or went over to AEW. It wasn't the same. The storylines alone were not there for NXT. Triple H had no more involvement in NXT at all. It was just Shawn. Back in the day, it was Shawn, Hunter, as well as Road Dogg. They were all a part of the creative team for NXT until Vince and Bruce Pritchard got their hands on it and destroyed it. But all in all, I mean, Dynamite last night, was it a solid show? Absolutely. It was a solid show. I mean, there was a couple of things that, you kind of scratch your head on, like, Sheeta beating Saraya. I didn't see that coming. And Orange Cassidy beating Rey Fenix. Now, I understand in the aspect of maybe Rey Fenix is, obviously injured. And this might be some, an opportunity for Rey Fenix to take some time off and to heal up his wounds and come back 100% healthy, which I'm all for that. But at the same time, to have Orange Cassidy win it back, and then, my thing is why did he lose it in the first place? And on top of that, because he won it, obviously Jon Moxley will get another opportunity at the International Championship. So is Cassidy just going to lose it again and hot potato that belt right over to Jon Moxley? So, I mean, it's still up in the air what's going to happen with that. So, again, it was a solid night. And honestly, I mean, the first match, Bryan Danielson versus Swerve, again, solid matchup, man. The body of work that Danielson's done since his, AEW debut has been absolutely awesome. The matches he had, Omega, Okada, Zack Sabre Jr., Ricky Starks. He's had some phenomenal matches in AEW. Phenomenal. And then you look at Swerve. And Swerve, I will reiterate this a million times over, man, that he is underrated. Swerve's underrated. And honestly, he continuously keeps showing people what he's made of night in, night out. The guy is a workhorse, man. Swerve's a workhorse. And, him being a heel, absolutely awesome. The whole Prince Nana thing and Swerve, it absolutely works, man. The fans are gravitated towards it. And Swerve, not that he needs it, but Prince Nana is a humongous mouthpiece for Swerve. I mean, you see Prince Nana coming down to the ring with Swerve, and he's doing that dance, and the entire crowd's doing that exact same dance that Prince Nana is doing. It's absolutely awesome. But do I believe Swerve deserves a title opportunity and to wear AEW gold around his waist? Hell yes. Hell yes. Absolutely. Because my thing is this, the body of work that he's put in, the matches that he has had, the match he had with Adam Page alone, should put him in a conversation as one of the top draws for AEW. The top names. He should be up there with the Omegas and the Danielsons and the Page and, the Bucks. Absolutely. In my honest opinion. And I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up, and sit here and blow smoke. Swerve is one of those guys that needs to be a top draw for AEW. And I truly believe that he is. But with that being said, I also think, hopefully, soon, we can see, AEW Championship gold around Swerve's waist. And I personally thought an opportunity at the TNT Championship and beating Christian and become the new TNT champion might be it. But there's a lot of issues with that as well. What Christian's doing right now, my God, man. What he's done since he's turned heel and the whole thing with him and Jack Perry and how that all, went down and everything else like that and him just becoming a heel. Christian should never be a babyface, to be honest with you. Obviously everybody wants to see at least one day Copeland and Christian to team up and, end their career as a tag team. Sure. I'm all for that. Absolutely. Because there's a lot of tag team matchups on the table for both Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. 100%. But right now, with him being a heel, man, it's absolutely perfect. Christian even started the show last night. You see him in the production truck, and he's mocking Copeland. He's talking about Beth and mocking, he didn't talk about Beth during that time, but he's in the production truck talking about Adam Copeland. But he also did mention Beth in a promo before the matchup took place between Luchasaurus and Adam Copeland, which, obviously pissed off Copeland. He ran down to the ring and was attacked by Nick Wayne. But with that being said, him holding that TNT Championship and him being in that production truck before the show even took place and telling everybody that because he's a TNT champion, the first 30 minutes of AEW are going to be commercial free. So, it was just, again, the aura, if you will, around Christian Cage right now with him being, a heel. It's flawless, man. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's awesome shit. It really is. Right now with what he's doing, this is the best work I've seen from Christian, honestly, in my opinion, as far as the singles run is concerned, since his time in Impact Wrestling. To be honest. I think Christian in Impact Wrestling as a heel, awesome. And I feel like we're getting, snippets of that, if you will, with him being a TNT champion. And it's absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. It's cool to see, man. It really is. And honestly, this week, Collision, again, I mentioned a couple of times throughout the podcast that it's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Bryan Danielson will, in fact, be challenging Christian Cage for the TNT Championship this Saturday on Collision. Definitely looking forward to that match as well. And I look forward to what's going to happen next with Copeland. Now that he, beat Luchasaurus, what's next for Copeland? Who's going to be, who's he going to challenge next? Or will we one day see Copeland and Christian Cage team up and maybe chase after the AEW Tag Team Championships, man? Definitely looking forward to seeing that as well. But with all in all, solid Dynamite last night. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful and remember, stay classic. Peace.